There were reports out there yesterday that the Cavs are exploring possible sign and trade options.
Stop what you are doing right now, because the NBA offseason just took a turn that nobody saw coming. Word is leaking out of Cleveland that the Cavaliers have made a power move so calculated, so bold, and so emotionally loaded that it has sent shockwaves through every front office in the league. The Cleveland Cavaliers are reportedly willing to sign Bronny James and make room on their roster specifically to convince LeBron James to come home. And when LeBron found out what Cleveland was doing behind the scenes, his reaction changed the entire trajectory of this free agency. But here is the part most people are missing. This is not just a basketball story. What Cleveland is doing right now is something far more complex, far more controversial, and far more emotionally layered than a simple roster move. They are using a 21-year-old kid, LeBron's own son, as a recruiting chip. And LeBron James, one of the most calculated minds in the history of professional sports, is watching every single move. So let's break all of it down. The strategy, the reaction, the money, the moral question, and exactly what this means for where LeBron James plays his final season in the NBA. Here is what the evidence actually shows, and the reporting here is coming from some of the most credible names in basketball journalism. Mark Stein and Jake Fisher of the Stein Line published a detailed breakdown on the 4th of July laying out exactly what Cleveland has been doing since free agency opened. According to their reporting, the Cavaliers were widely expected to finalize a new deal with James Harden and aggressively pursue Jonathan Kuminga out of Atlanta. Neither of those things happened. The only transaction Cleveland completed in the opening days of free agency was a veteran's minimum contract for backup center Thomas Bryant. That is it. Dean Wade left for Philadelphia. Keon Ellis signed with Brooklyn. 2 rotation players walked out the door, and the Cavaliers simply let them go without so much as a competitive counteroffer. And according to Stein and Fisher, sources around the league believe the reason is this: Cleveland is deliberately holding roster spots open so that if LeBron James agrees to return home, they have the cap flexibility and the roster space to immediately go trade for Bronny James from the Lakers. Brian Windhorst, a Cleveland native and one of the most plugged-in LeBron reporters in the business, has been circling this same theory, and as Stein and Fisher wrote directly in their reporting, the conspiracy whisper making the rounds is that Cleveland wants to make absolutely sure it has open roster spots to trade for the Lakers' Bronny James in the event they can welcome Dad back as a free agent signee. That is not speculation. That is a pattern of deliberate, coordinated, organizational behavior being confirmed by the most respected reporters covering this sport. And when you lay those facts side by side, the picture that emerges is not subtle. The Cavaliers are not simply being patient in free agency. They are engineering a specific outcome, and Bronny James is the centerpiece of the engineering. The Yardbarker report published alongside Stein and Fisher's work added another critical layer, noting that a growing belief among the teams pursuing James is that a return to Cleveland has become what insiders are calling the scenario to be. That is a significant characterization, not one option among many. The scenario to be, meaning Cleveland's plan built around open roster spots and the promise of Bronny, is working. And here is where the numbers tell the story even more clearly. LeBron James officially informed the Los Angeles Lakers that he would not be returning following the 2025-26 season. And when that news broke, Jeannie Buss released a statement calling LeBron one of the greatest athletes in history and expressing the franchise's permanent gratitude for his 8 seasons in purple and gold, including the 2020 championship he delivered under what she described as the toughest imaginable circumstances. LeBron responded publicly with his own gracious message, calling it an honor to wear the purple and gold while trying to honor the legacies that came before him. It was the kind of farewell exchange that acknowledged everything that had been accomplished without letting sentiment cloud the clarity of what was happening. LeBron James was moving on. He entered unrestricted free agency for what many insiders believe is the twilight chapter of an extraordinary career. At 41 years old, entering a record-breaking 24th NBA season, he is no longer making decisions based purely on championships. The numbers confirm this. His body maintenance budget, publicly discussed, exceeds $1.5 million annually, covering recovery technology, specialized nutrition, personal medical staff, and sleep protocols that have allowed him to continue performing at an all-star level despite managing reported arthritis and sciatica. He is still elite, but the clock is ticking and everybody in the league knows it. Many insiders believe his next contract, regardless of destination, will be structured as a 1 or 2 year arrangement rather than a long-term commitment. Similar to how elite athletes in other sports have signed farewell deals built around financial security and narrative closure rather than multi-year roster commitment. Rich Paul, LeBron's agent and the founder of Clutch Sports, appeared on the Game Over podcast with Max Kellerman and literally pulled out a whiteboard listing 10 franchises in legitimate contention for LeBron's services: the Knicks, the Sixers, the Celtics, the Heat, the Warriors, the Timberwolves, the Nuggets, the Spurs, the Mavericks, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. When Forbes journalist Mark Medina pressed Paul on the timeline, Paul's answer was plain: this decision is not coming in the next few days. LeBron is taking his time. He is watching, he is evaluating every detail. And what Cleveland is doing with Bronny James is very much part of what he is evaluating. Now, to understand why Bronny James sits at the absolute center of all of this, you have to understand what Bronny represents to LeBron. And that story starts long before any NBA draft. Bronny James grew up at Sierra Canyon High School in Los Angeles, playing in games that drew national television audiences and more media attention than most college programs ever see. He spent one season at USC navigating the impossible weight of being LeBron James' son in the city where his father was already a living legend. Then in the summer before his college year, the basketball world stopped when Bronny suffered a cardiac arrest during a workout at USC. The recovery was long, it was painful, it was deeply personal for an entire family. Bronny fought through it with a resilience that earned him genuine respect across the league, separate from his father's legacy. He came back, declared for the NBA draft, and in 2024, the Los Angeles Lakers selected him in the second round.
With the 55th pick in the 2024 NBA draft, the Los Angeles Lakers select Bronny James from the University of Southern California.
In that single moment, LeBron James and Bronny James became the first father and son in the history of the National Basketball Association to share a roster simultaneously. It was a milestone that LeBron has spoken openly about for years, and when it happened, he made clear without any hesitation that achieving it ranked among the most meaningful moments of his entire career, championships included. Bronny's current contract with the Lakers is a 4-year deal worth approximately $7.9 million. His salary for the 2026-27 season sits at roughly $2.3 million, a number that became fully guaranteed after June 29th, 2026. And here is where LeBron's exit timing becomes one of the most telling details in this entire story. LeBron did not announce his departure from Los Angeles until after that date. He waited specifically and intentionally until his son's financial security for the upcoming season was completely locked in before making his own move public. Insiders across the league read that timeline as exactly what it was: a father protecting his son first and making his own career decisions second. But here is the critical fact that changes everything about Cleveland's plan. Bronny James is not a free agent. He is under contract with the Lakers through the 2026-27 season. Cleveland cannot simply call him in for a meeting or offer him a deal. To get Bronny James in a Cavaliers uniform, they have to execute a trade with Los Angeles. And according to detailed analysis from Bleacher Report, one of the most discussed frameworks involves Cleveland acquiring Bronny through a pre-existing traded player exception generated by Jared Allen's contract. In this scenario, the Cavaliers sent Allen, Dennis Schroeder, Dean Wade, and Sam Merrill to Los Angeles and receive in return LeBron James, Bronny James, DeAndre Ayton, Jake LaRavia, and Dalton Knecht. LeBron would sign a 3-year deal worth approximately $63 million, structured at roughly $20 million for the first season, with the private understanding that the full contract term may not be played out, similar to arrangements made by aging stars across sports who sign for financial security rather than long-term commitment. The moment that deal closes, Cleveland triggers a first apron hard cap of approximately $209.1 million, meaning the Cavaliers would need to build out their remaining roster through the taxpayer mid-level exception projected around $6.1 million in veterans minimum deals. It is not a simple transaction. It requires sacrifice. It requires Allen, Schroeder, Merrill, and Cleveland's existing depth to be cleared out to make the financial architecture work, and the Cavaliers appear prepared to make every single one of those sacrifices. But here is where we have to slow down and ask the question that is generating the most heated debate inside basketball circles right now. Is Cleveland actually doing something brilliant here? Or are they using a 21-year-old kid as a bargaining chip to land his famous father? Think about what this situation actually looks like from Bronny's perspective. He is still early in his development as a professional basketball player. He played real minutes for the Lakers during the 2025-26 season and even appeared in legitimate playoff action during the first round against the Houston Rockets. He is not a star. He is not a franchise cornerstone. He is a young player figuring out what his NBA career looks like. And now, without any input from him, front offices are using his name and his availability as a recruiting tool in a negotiation that has nothing to do with his basketball ability and everything to do with his last name. Critics across basketball media have been sharp and direct about this. They argue that what Cleveland is doing commodifies Bronny, treats him as a transaction rather than a human being, and continues a pattern where his entire career has been shaped by forces larger than his own choices. His draft selection, his Lakers tenure, and now potentially a trade to Cleveland are all moving pieces in a story where he is the least powerful person in the room. That is a legitimate criticism, and it deserves to be taken seriously. On the other side of that argument, though, are analysts and insiders who point out that LeBron James has been publicly and transparently honest about wanting to play alongside his son for years before any of this happened. This was never a secret. LeBron spoke about it in interviews on podcasts and in press conferences long before any team ever drafted Bronny. Cleveland is not exploiting some private family vulnerability. They are responding to a stated personal priority of the most famous basketball player alive, and doing so in a way that still builds a legitimate competitive roster around that priority. The Cavaliers already have Donovan Mitchell, one of the premier offensive stars in the Eastern Conference. They have Evan Mobley, one of the most versatile defensive players in the game. LeBron playing power forward with Mobley sliding to center is a natural positional fit that actually improves the team's structural integrity. Bronny in that environment would not need to be a star. He could continue developing without carrying organizational pressure, benefiting from his father's presence and competing for a championship caliber team. From that perspective, Cleveland is not exploiting a family situation. They are honoring a father's dream and building something real around it simultaneously. Now let's talk about what LeBron's reported reaction to all of this actually reveals, because this is the part most coverage has underplayed. Multiple sources close to the situation have described LeBron's response to Cleveland's Bronny strategy not as surprise, not as flattery, and not as manipulation, but as recognition. He sees a franchise reading exactly what he wants, what he has said he wants for years, and restructuring its entire offseason around making it possible. According to the Steinline's reporting, a growing belief among the teams actively pursuing James is that a return to Cleveland has emerged as what insiders are calling the scenario to be. The emotional gravity alone is staggering. LeBron James grew up in Akron, Ohio. The Cavaliers drafted him first overall out of St. Vincent St. Mary High School in 2003. He left in 2010, spent 4 years winning titles in Miami, returned home in 2014, delivered Cleveland his first major professional sports championship in 52 years on June 19, 2016. In a Game 7 comeback from 3-1 against the most dominant regular season team in NBA history, then left again in 2018. The chase down block on Andre Iguodala, Kyrie's 3, the celebration in downtown Cleveland that brought an entire city to tears. That championship lives in a different emotional category than anything else LeBron has ever done. Coming back to the Cavaliers is not a basketball decision for LeBron James. It is a decision about what story he once told when his career is finally over. And Cleveland's ownership understands exactly how much that story is worth, not just emotionally but financially. The last time LeBron James wore a Cavaliers jersey, the economic impact on Northeast Ohio was measured in hundreds of millions of dollars flowing through ticket sales, merchandise, tourism, national television revenue, sponsorship contracts, and the kind of global media attention that follows LeBron everywhere he plays. Ownership lived through those years. They remember the 4 arenas, the packed hotel rooms, the merchandise lines stretching around the block, and the franchise valuation numbers climbing to levels that seemed impossible before LeBron came home. If bringing Bronny James to Cleveland is what it takes to get LeBron James back in the Cavaliers uniform, even for one final season, the return on that investment is not even close to debatable from a business perspective. This is why league insiders describe Bronny not simply as a roster addition, but as Cleveland's most powerful recruiting tool. He is the one thing no other franchise in the NBA can offer LeBron James right now. However, and this is the complication that insiders are watching very carefully, Cleveland is not the only team pursuing LeBron with a compelling argument, and some of those competing arguments have real teeth. The Miami Heat made a blockbuster move by acquiring two-time MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo, creating what many observers immediately argued was the most dangerous championship caliber roster in the league. Reports surfaced suggesting that LeBron currently views Miami as a more viable destination than Cleveland, specifically because of Giannis's presence. And Rich Paul did not immediately knock those reports down, which kept the Heat firmly in the conversation. LeBron won his first two championships in Miami in 2012 and 2013 alongside Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. He knows that franchise, he trusts that culture, and the idea of pairing with Giannis for a potential fifth ring is not a pitch any rational competitor dismisses easily. The Golden State Warriors emerged as frontrunners at various points throughout the early days of free agency, leveraging Stephen Curry's legacy and the franchise's championship pedigree as part of their pitch. But their pursuit hit complications when they were unable to complete a trade for Anthony Davis, limiting the roster flexibility that LeBron's camp was hoping to see. The Minnesota Timberwolves, carrying a young core built around Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball, made an aggressive case centered on LeBron's opportunity to deliver a first championship to a franchise that has never celebrated one, an angle that appeals directly to the legacy-conscious side of LeBron's decision-making. The Philadelphia 76ers, reinvigorated by the acquisition of Jaylen Brown in a trade that sent Paul George to Philadelphia, and the Boston Celtics have also been mentioned as teams receiving legitimate consideration, according to Rich Paul's own whiteboard presentation. 10 franchises, all with real arguments, all competing for the same decision. And through all of that noise, Cleveland has stayed almost completely quiet, holding its roster spots open, preserving its salary cap space, and waiting. That quiet is itself the loudest possible message the Cavaliers could send. It says, "We are not trying to win the off-season press conference. We are building you the exact situation you have told us you want for years." Cavaliers fans have responded to every leak of Cleveland's strategy with the kind of emotionally charged energy that only a fan base carrying the memory of that 2016 championship parade can generate. Social media across basketball platforms has been flooded with videos of the Iguodala block. Photos of LeBron hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy with tears streaming down his face, and messages from fans in Akron and Cleveland and across all of Northeast Ohio describing what a third homecoming would mean to them personally. These are not casual sports fans making noise on the internet. These are people who lived through 52 years without a championship, who watched LeBron leave in 2010 and felt it like a personal betrayal, who stood in the streets for the parade in 2016 and wept openly because of what that victory meant for their city. The idea of LeBron James coming home one final time with his son beside him carries weight that transcends basketball statistics or salary cap arguments. It carries the weight of community and identity, and a rare gift of a story that comes full circle in the most satisfying way imaginable. LeBron himself has never left Ohio behind, even during his years in Miami and Los Angeles. His I Promise school in Akron, which has provided housing, meals, education, and support services to hundreds of children and families in the community where he grew up, remains one of the defining projects of his life. His foundation has invested tens of millions of dollars in Akron. He has said repeatedly and publicly that Northeast Ohio is home in a way that no arena, no franchise, and no contract can replace. If he comes back to play for the Cavaliers, he would not simply be signing with a basketball team. He will be completing a circle that started when a kid from Akron walked into the queue for the first time as a first overall draft pick in 2003 and told a city that he was going to make them proud. But there is another layer to the fan conversation that has been more complicated, and it deserves honest acknowledgement. Some fans, including Cavaliers fans, have expressed genuine discomfort with the idea that a 21-year-old's career trajectory is being shaped entirely by his father's free agency situation. The debate about whether Bronny James belongs in the NBA on his own merits has followed him from the moment the Lakers selected him, and Cleveland's explicit plan to acquire him as part of a LeBron package only amplifies those voices. Former players weighing in on sports television and podcasts have been split. Some praise Cleveland's creative thinking as exactly the kind of outside-the-box approach that franchises have to take to land generational talent. Others question what it communicates about the league's meritocracy when a young player's roster spot on a championship contender is determined not by his basketball ability, but by his father's desire to play alongside him. And that broader question about Bronny's identity leads to something worth examining carefully as the story approaches its conclusion. LeBron James has invested enormous personal capital in his son's basketball career, far beyond what most fathers are able to offer, and perhaps more than most sons are equipped to receive. He has championed Bronny publicly in every form available to him. He has shaped his development privately through access to resources, trainers, and competitive environments that no other player of Bronny's draft position has ever had. He engineered the circumstances that put them on the same NBA court as teammates for the first time in league history. And now, intentionally or not, his free agency decision is actively shaping which franchise Bronny plays for next season. Whether that represents a father's beautiful and unconditional love for his son, or something more complicated, a parent whose shadow has followed his child into every professional room he has ever walked into, is a conversation that will follow both of them long after either of them plays another game. But what nobody in that conversation can take away from Bronny James is this. He survived a cardiac arrest at 20 years old. He came back. He played in the NBA. He competed in playoff games. He exists in that league on his own 2 feet. Regardless of the forces that shaped his path there, his circumstances have been extraordinary and his journey genuinely remarkable. And if he ends up in Cleveland alongside his father for what could be LeBron's final season, the basketball world will witness something it has quite literally never experienced before. A father and a son competing together on a championship caliber roster in the same city where the father's legend was born. Under the same lights where that father once stood at 18 years old and promised an entire region that he would give them something to celebrate. That is not a moment that fits neatly into a salary cap spreadsheet. It is something else entirely. So here is where everything stands right now, and here is the bottom line that cuts through all of the noise. The Cleveland Cavaliers are not just making a roster move, they're making a bet, a calculated, expensive, emotionally sophisticated bet that LeBron James, standing at the absolute edge of his playing career, will look at a city that loves him unconditionally, look at a front office that has deliberately dismantled its own offseason just to make room for his son, look at the chance to write an ending so emotionally complete that no novelist could have scripted it better, and say yes, that bet is not a small one. Letting Wade walk to Philadelphia, letting Ellis walk to Brooklyn, passing on Harden, passing on Kuminga, sitting in silence while every other competitive franchise made noise. All of that represents real organizational sacrifice in the name of a single phone call from LeBron James and Rich Paul. Based on everything we know right now, based on the growing belief inside league circles that Cleveland has become the scenario to beat, based on LeBron's own publicly stated priorities across years of interviews and statements, based on the calculated and deliberate timing of every move he has made since departing Los Angeles, that bet does not look reckless. It looks like the most accurate reading of LeBron James that any franchise has produced during this entire free agency period. Cleveland sees LeBron not merely as a basketball asset to be signed and deployed, they see him as a father who has one remaining basketball dream and who is choosing right now whether to chase that dream in Ohio. They built everything around that understanding, and the fact that it appears to be working, that league insiders are calling Cleveland the scenario to beat. That Rich Paul put the Cavaliers on that whiteboard, that LeBron timed his exit to protect Bronny's guarantee, that all of these threads are pulling toward the same place, is not a coincidence. It is the result of a franchise making the right read at the right moment and having the patience and the courage to act on it without flinching. Whether that makes Cleveland brilliant or makes them guilty of using a young man's career as a bargaining chip is a question every fan watching the story unfold will have to answer for themselves. What do you think? Does Cleveland's strategy cross a line by using Bronny as a recruiting tool? Or is this exactly the kind of bold, family-first thinking that finally gets LeBron James home? Drop your answer in the comments right now because this story is moving fast and a decision could come any day. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it before this next chapter drops, because when LeBron James finally announces where he is going, you are going to want to be here for every second of the breakdown.